15.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Happy Monday to us all. Thank you for being a part and hanging out with us. You can be a part, 855-752-4842-855-75 Civic. Just PS on the board, working hard for you. Harvey K., our favorite Delano Democrat. He's going to join us at 5 o'clock. It's Monday. We're making it a regular thing. He's a professor emeritus of democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Harvey rolling in at 5 p.m. Democracy. We still have that here, right? Isn't that a thing?
I hear that it's not, in the best shape, but we do, in theory, still have it for the moment.
Well, me and democracy, neither of us are in the best shape. But hopefully, as time goes on, if we get past the silly season and off of the cutout frosted cookies, we'll get into better shape. Me
cookies.
and democracy. Lots of topics to get to today here in the state of Wisconsin. Talking about weed legalization, what Republicans think about abortion. Well, we know what they think. We're going to get into some of that as well. But I want to start perhaps where we left off last week, the fires in Los Angeles. Man, right? And I have seen some additional footage over the weekend on the socials, and I haven't verified the veracity of any of it, but let me just say it looks pretty real to me. And oh my God, when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds, coming out and crisply burning, it's constant.
It's a fire tornado.
It never ends, and you can't spray anything. You can't get the aircraft in the air. It was just devastating to see that. Now apparently winds died down a bit. Now they're going to come back again. Perhaps not as high as 100, but 60, 70 mile an hour gusts. That's still
no joke.
Still no joke, certainly, but perhaps more than they're used to that, more so than anything else. So again, and unfortunately, as we talked about last week, mentioned concern that perhaps the death rate would go up. It has gone up to 24 now dead and confirmed dead. I think some more like around that number missing. So, given the devastation, that's still tragic. It could be worse, and hopefully it doesn't get much worse than that. But that number we will keep an eye on. And just like any good politician, never let a disaster go to waste.
Never.
The notus.org, notus.org, one of my more recent sources for news. Is it not us or notice? I guess.
I think it's notice because,
notice?
like, you would say
like
POTUS.
POTUS.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, they not like us.
Not like us.
All right, I'm going to go with notice like POTUS. And they got a piece entitled Trump Floats California Aid Debt Ceiling Gambit with Mar-a-Lago Meeting with White House Factions. So they had a little party down at the Mar-a-Lago with different factions of the house.
Is that the Orange House?
The Orange House. And what did they come away with? Well, they have a couple different policy items, the SALT, being able to write off your taxes and above a certain amount and things along those lines. But what did they come away with on the fire? And here's just a bit of that reporting. The California wildfires came up with Trump and lawmakers specifically discussing whether or not to tie California disaster aid to the debt ceiling. Trump encouraged the Republicans at the meeting to talk with Speaker Mike Johnson, who was not in attendance, about the idea. And today, we did hear sound of Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson. And it wasn't great sound, so we didn't pull it and cut it. He's walking through the
Lots of
echoey hallways.
and...
Yeah, the clickety-clack of walking in the Capitol and talking to the guy. Essentially saying, we should look at tying policy changes and things like the debt ceiling to this aid.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself,
got to be some conditions.
What? Why? And it's absolute ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous on a couple of levels. Number one, you're not harming your political rivals, right? I mean, it's going to be tough enough for the the local politicians and Gavin Newsom and the other folks, they got to deal with their constituents, and whether or not they messed something up or could have done something more, that'll be up for those voters to decide. When Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans threaten to withhold disaster aid based on whatever conditions they want, whether it's raking the forest or getting a deal on the debt ceiling, throwing in things that have zero to do with helping people, helping American citizens rebuild after the disaster, it's going to affect those people. It's going to affect the citizens. It's not, Gavin Newsom isn't going to be worried about paying the cable bill. You know what I mean? Donald Trump's going to go after him no matter what he does. Now, perhaps, as mentioned, perhaps there could be some concern from your constituents. That's for Gavin and the citizens of California to figure out. But if Donald Trump and Mike Johnson and the rest of the MAGA are going to play games with helping out and providing disaster relief, they're only hurting the voters, the citizens, man. They're only hurting those people. They're not going to hurt their political rivals in this case. It's the people that will suffer. And while Donald Trump, he puts it out there, and these guys act like, this is it'll be an albatross around the neck of the local politicians out there. Well, okay, but what about the people that you're actually harming? And if you try to cut a deal like that and folks don't go along with it, they want perhaps just a naked standalone deal to provide, disaster relief. Maybe put whatever that fund is, they should probably double it. Given the fact you had a couple of hurricanes hit the southeast part of the state country this past year, and we have these fires going on, and this happens every year. It doesn't seem like these things are easing up. So whatever that budget is, maybe Congress should allocate a little more money to that. If we're gonna ignore climate change, well, then maybe we should put a little more funding into our support for the disaster that are sure to come. As we talked about last week, the experts that were quoted in the reporting, there is nothing they could have done to prevent those kinds of fires when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds and those kind of fires burning and embers are flying all over the place. You can't jump around. Everyone's got their hose on, so there's very little pressure, even if the pot's full. You know what I'm saying? So a disaster, certainly. Could there be things? Yeah, maybe. We'll find out. Does Donald Trump have any idea? Hells to the no.
And does any of this help anyone right now?
Right now.
To say, well, you should have done that and you should have done that. It's like, okay, let's take a hard look at what happened.
Well, isn't it?
That's what they're doing. I mean,
shouldn't the Republicans be like they normally would be after a school shooting? Thoughts and prayers. Now's not the time. But apparently, now is the time. When the flames are still burning and the ashes are still hot. They're out there trying to put their political rivals in the dirt.
Well, and I also have to say, I mean, we had 2 hurricanes hitting the Southeast just a couple months ago. I didn't hear any Democrats saying, well, in terms of putting aid relief there, we need to attach a few conditions.
Yeah, no.
We need to, make sure that, a hurricane might be unavoidable, but this level of catastrophe, surely avoidable. Never heard any of that. Never heard.
And what you did hear was some Republicans, and Trump specifically, if I recall correctly, accuse the Biden administration of steering FEMA aid away from Republican counties, which wasn't happening. In fact, some of those Republican counties were so anti-government that there was false information about what would happen if they actually accepted FEMA aid.
Yeah.
I mean, what that wasn't the Biden administration pulling strings on who gets what and how that goes down.
Absolutely
That should never be the case. I don't care what administration it is. I mean, FEMA and these organizations that provide these relief, it should absolutely be apolitical. This is not about politics. And if you have some policy issues, if you have some things you want done, well, do that through the legislative process. You don't withhold. I mean, come on, man. You're taking hostages.
Right.
And you're doing it to citizens, not to Gavin Newsom, not to the mayor of Los Angeles. It's to those folks that are impacted by this tragedy. 855-752-4842. So as you can imagine, I'm against any strings on any aid for any of these types of crises that would happen now or in the future. I don't want Trump doing it. I want MAGA doing it. I don't think it should be done if there's a Democratic administration. That should not be done. It was not done under the Biden administration when these hurricanes hit last year, and it should not be that way. It should never happen when it comes down to disaster relief. Disaster don't give a damn who you voted for. You know what I'm saying? 855-752-4842. Matt from Madtown. Early innovator, Matt. Welcome. Happy Monday. What do you got for us?
Hey, so just not to compare death tolls, but can we all remember that in 2021 that Greg Abbott allowed 246 people to die in the cold because of a very preventable Texas grid that they could have fixed? I didn't hear a boo from Trump. And let's also focus on the fact that they know that Gavin Newsom is one of probably three that are going to run against the Republican candidate. And what they're trying to do is this is going to be his Benghazi. They are going to run this down for 4 years, and they're going to pillory Gavin Newsom in the hopes that when he finally runs in 2028, which he most likely will, that they have something as a cudgel to beat him with. Like I said, it's going to be Benghazi.
Yes.
They'll find one email about a water pressure valve not being installed, and they're going to call it like his emails this time.
Matt, it's a great observation. It's absolutely the playbook, and they'll do it regardless of whether or not there's an email or not. It's not like any of these accusations or attacks on Mega's political enemies require any sense of honesty or truth. It might, maybe there might be something there, but if there's not, it doesn't matter. Listen to the way the president-elect talked about the hurricane aid in North Carolina, specifically accusing, without evidence, without proof, without anything other than he just wants to try to score some political points. And those are the kinds of things that you and I, all of us, need to be aware of and understand when these situations happen. Matt makes a great point. From a political standpoint, these things never, ever end. And certainly Gavin Newsom will be a rival for the Republicans and for MAGA in the future beyond the governor of California. And if you can try to, put that the Benghazi albatross around their neck, Matt, absolutely they will try. And hell, if they can punish California in any way, shape, or form, apparently they're going to try to do that as well. Tying disaster aid to what? To legislation that the president wants passed. Forcing Democrats once again to decide whether or not they want to support aid for California and tying that to a debt ceiling increase. Well, that doesn't seem fair. It seems like log rolling to me. I don't think that's proper. Folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. What do you think? Should the Democrats fight back on this? Should disaster aid be subject to political persuasion and attachment of other items? I don't think so. Tell me what you think. 855-75-CIVIC.
20 seconds.
Water. I'm going harder. Everyone's talking addicted to gossip, but I can be bothered. The money's irrelevant. The fame isn't part of it. Cause life is a test. There's no time to rest. I ain't even started yet.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. It's a phone line. It's a text line. Callers get priority, so let's get to it. 855-75 Mark from the SEC, you are next. Welcome. What do you got for us?
Yeah, as a lifelong Wisconsinite, I mean, wildfires occur in Wisconsin, can occur throughout the year, but most often in the springtime when winter's gone and things are dry and things can take off and when hell of a hurry. Fortunately, here in Wisconsin, we don't have Santa Ana winds coming in at 100 miles an hour and blowing this thing outside of it. And these Republicans should remember part of their oath to the document that they take is provide for the general welfare, and I could probably say provide for the for the common defense. I mean, defense against the fires in this case, but I mean, it is their duty to actually support our fellows in other states and not put political desires ahead of actually providing for these people. I mean, and they simply cannot do it. They're just and these people claim to be Christians, and they say, well, it's probably God has cast His judgment down upon California and the people in this area. Well, there's plenty of people of their ilk that are in this situation.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, it is just mind-boggling that even Fox News should be condemning this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I'd like to think it's mind-boggling, Mark, and thank you for the call and for hanging out with us. But it's kind of
clearly there's a lot of unboggled minds.
It's kind of par for the course, especially given Mega's attitudes here in the last several years. Thank you, 855-752-4842. A couple of you folks jumping in on the text line. Andrew from Maine, he says, new rule. Politicians cannot speak on the state of fires unless they have a working firehouse in their hand while they talk, like a conch shell. Yeah, come with something.
Right. Well, we had a texter on Friday who mentioned that, at her workplace, her supervisor has a rule. Don't bring up a problem unless you already have a potential solution to it.
Right.
When all you have are fingers to point, you might as well put those hands to use.
Another texter from the WMDX, the 920. If California wants disaster money for LA fires, all they have to do is tell dictator Don that his LA golf resort burnt up. Disaster problem solved. Right.
But then he'll come out with we need to get relief to this very specific
This one
location.
spot, right? My Diet Coke factory is going under. Gotta make sure that's okay. 855-752-4842. So the political game playing is I guess, I don't know, it's not mind-boggling, but it's certainly disappointing and it doesn't really help the folks that are on the ground right now. But it's kind of expected from folks like, I don't know, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. We got some sound of roadshow.
Unfortunately.
Yes, thank you for Jess working hard digging this
You're
up.
welcome.
I hadn't even heard this one. Ron used to come around quite a bit. Stopped inviting him after he tried to overthrow the government. But here is some of the sound of Ron. This is on the fires, right?
Yep.
Policy changes, man. Ron thinking outside the box here. Let's see what Ron had to say.
Do you think that when the disaster aid in the Senate comes through, that Congress will put some kind of limits on it, going, we're not wasting it on your nonsense, California. We're getting it to the people who've been hurt?
We certainly should. I certainly wouldn't vote for anything unless we see dramatic change in how they're going to be handling these things in the future. But again, these fires, the disaster, the catastrophe that these fires were, you can't prevent fires, but you can certainly prevent the catastrophe. It's about preventable. These are decisions Californian Democrats have made year after year after year. They divert water into the ocean. They don't fill up their reservoirs. They don't clean up their forests. They don't get rid of the underbrush, the real tinder, the real fuel for these fires. So again, it's their fault.
It's their fault. It's their fault.
It's their fault, Dom.
It's their fault. It's you folks living in California. And whether or not you're a Republican or not, maybe if you're a Republican and you don't have a Republican governor, well, you Republicans aren't trying hard enough because your Republican governor would have certainly have fixed this problem. Donald Trump will certainly fix this problem, right? He's going to fix everything. It's your fault. Now, I don't remember any politician saying the folks that had to endure those catastrophic hurricanes last year to say that it is their fault. I didn't hear that. Now, is it someone's responsibility where they live? Sometimes it is. Sometimes you got to live where you can. Is it your fault for what is this like accident, like getting into a car accident? Like no fault rule here? It's their fault. It's everybody's fault, man. How is Ron Johnson going to sit here and say to those folks living in California that it's their fault? It's your fault. And there's Republicans sitting there. There's millions and millions and millions of Republicans. Is it their fault or just the Democrats' fault? Ron Johnson says it's your fault that the fires were in California. It's your fault that those winds were 100 miles an hour coming down. It's your fault they couldn't get the fixed wing or the helicopter aircraft up in the air. It's your fault. And because of that, you're going to be punished for it by a guy like Ron Johnson who blames you. Blames you for that. 855-752-4842. Tom from West Dallas, you're up. Welcome, Tom. What do you got?
Hey there. It's their fault. Anyone who understands this, even basic physics, the empty fire hydrants, the only reason why they were empty is because everyone was using their garden hoses to water down their houses or whatever. They had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fire hydrants open. There's no way they could handle that kind of volume. And there is no country, no city in the world that had a fire system that could handle that kind of volume of water. Why are people so can't think this through? There's reasons for this. It's not their fault. They did not, and they were saying, I even heard CJ say, well, they knew a year ago there was a report on this. What were they going to do in 1 year? Look how many years it's going to take to fix this to lead pipes here in Milwaukee, let alone try to make a fire system that could put out a fire like that. Everyone is just talking stupid about this.
Yes.
Okay, I'm off.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your passion and your point. You're absolutely right. What kind of that's the other question. What kind of system would have prevented this? You know what I'm saying? And is that the kind of infrastructure that Donald Trump and the megas are willing to put into places like Southern California, where the Dems vote against them all the time? I highly doubt it. Come back with us, 855-752-4842.
1 minute. $30.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, 855-75 Civic. Stick around next hour. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour. Look forward to catching up on Harvey's, which we do every Monday at 5 o'clock. So stick around for that as well. And be a part, 855-75 Civic. Turning our attention to Wisconsin. And no, we're not talking about the Packers. That was a terrible game. I mean, what a way to start out. It was just, did you watch the game?
Part of it.
Part of it. I mean, first play, turnover. It was like, I mean, talk about.
That's a bad omen.
The harbinger of things to come. It was not great. But it has now been established. I believe Washington will be playing my beloved Lions next time. And I've been making the joke with my friends. And if you're a Lions fan, you know they have never won the Super Bowl. Haven't won a world championship with football since like 1957.
Oh, wow.
And I've been saying, you know, I'm so used. I'm used to the Lions not playing in the first round of the playoffs, but not because they get a bye, because they just never make it. So this is a weird spot for us Lions fans to be in. So I know you folks, if you listen, you know, root for the Lions. Minnesota's playing tonight, and root for the Lions next week. 855-752-4842. Rooting for, well, not the Republicans here in the state of Wisconsin. Molly Beck reporting from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Senate leader signals 14-week abortion ban if Wisconsin Supreme Court upholds access. They just can't let it go.
They can't.
They just cannot let it go.
I thought we weren't supposed to be even thinking about abortion anymore now that Trump's been elected.
Yeah, you're not going to think about it anymore.
Not gonna think about it.
It's all fine. It's all good. A little bit from the reporting, Republican lawmakers who control the legislature could pursue legislation that would bar women from seeking abortions after 14 weeks of pregnancy if the Supreme Court preserves access as part of a lawsuit before the High Court. Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu, in an appearance on WISN TV's Upfront Politics talk show, said that if the state Supreme Court liberal majority rules abortion is legal in the state without restrictions, or if they uphold the state's previous law that bars abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy, his caucus could pursue a new abortion law because they got nothing else to do.
Yeah, we don't have, pressing needs
That's
for our
fine.
schools to be funded. We don't have infrastructure needs.
No. It's about white men telling women what to do with their bodies.
Right. That playbook hasn't gotten old.
No, not at all. Let me tell you more. Here's what LeMahieu said. If they make abortion legal at full term, or if they keep it at the 20-week restriction, we could try to 14 weeks. At that point, we'll try to build consensus to see where our caucus is and where the assembly is at. Now, LeMahieu did not schedule a vote on a previous proposal to bar abortions after 14 weeks of pregnancy that was put forward by the assembly leaders and passed last year. Now, with voters' approval, the legislation would have banned abortions 14 weeks after probable fertilization, quote unquote, except in situations where the mother's life or the health would be endangered without the procedure, a measure that would reduce the time frame for legal abortions in Wisconsin by 6 weeks. Now, the bill did not initially include exceptions for pregnancies resulting from rape or incest, but the bill's authors amended it before voting to add those exceptions following public criticism.
Oh, just a little afterthought.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you for your...
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. You're an afterthought.
Literally.
Yeah. Rape, incest, afterthought.
Afterthought.
Oh, wait, people got a problem with that? Well, I guess we should stick it in there then. Amendments to the bill would also require doctors to make reasonable efforts to preserve the life of the fetus during medical emergencies.
They already do that.
Stop. Now they're going to be really do it. They're going to really
No, what this is going to do is impose further restrictions and cause delays when a pregnant person comes in for emergency health care needs, and their provider then has to go through additional steps to certify that no, they are not making any unnecessary risks towards the unborn child, which they were already not going to do.
You know, when you put it like that, it makes it sound really bad.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more here from the reporting. Wisconsin Republicans have struggled. Well, it's not just Wisconsin Republicans, the Republican Party in general, have struggled to combat the political effects of the 2022 U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, which effectively put back into place a law that had been interpreted for more than a century to ban all abortions, except when the mother would die without one. Abortion has become a central issue in races in Wisconsin since, certainly has. Now, several Assembly Republicans who voted for the bill in 2024 said they were conflicted, noting that while they are completely opposed to abortion, many of their constituents believe it should be legal in some form. Well, what do you do? What do you do? Now, here's the numbers. In October, 63% of voters polled by the Marquette University Law School said abortion should be legal in all or most cases. 63%, while 37% it should be illegal in all or most cases. So 63-37. A November 2022 poll found that 84% of voters support allowing abortions in cases of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest. So 63%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a
pretty substantial.
That's a significant
majority.
Above 50%. Yeah, and 37%. No, not enough. So and here's we've had this discussion about using ballot amendments, referendums to get bills passed. And as it stands right now in the state of Wisconsin, Tony Evers wants to offer that to the citizens. Well,
a little bit more democracy.
Well, we should have it. Well, why can't the citizens of the state, put something, get the petitions together, get the signatures, get something on the ballot. If the people vote for it, then it's a law. Period. Yeah. Why is that such a threat? Why is democracy, expanded democracy, and it's not like something that's never happened. Lots of states have a binding referendum, the ability for folks to put it on, citizens to put a referendum on the ballot and make it become law. Why not? Well, because, of course, a lot of those issues, the Republicans, they lose on. They don't want it. They don't want, even though they know, 63% of those folks polled the Marquette University Law School poll last year said they want this to be legal. Mm-hmm. Even though they know that is a majority of people. They want to use their majority in the legislature to support and pursue a minority position against the will of the people.
Indeed. And we should note that is a majority in the legislature for now. And that is a much narrower majority than they had in the last session.
Yes. LeMahieu said that he believes the court, which is controlled by liberals and a 4-3, is slow playing the case in an effort to use the issue in the April 1st election that will decide the control of the court. As we've talked about at length, Dane County Circuit Court Susan Crawford and Waukesha County Circuit Court Judge Brad Schimmel are vying to replace liberal Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, who retires from the court this year. So they're playing from behind on this issue, but they have the majority in the House and in the Senate, but they do not have the governor's desk. So good luck with all that. Mm-hmm. Another one. Now, while we're talking about that, let's throw this one out there also from Molly Beck. Wisconsin marijuana legalization faces familiar headwinds in new legislative session. And again, the same kind of thing. There is a majority of folks who are down with
and this
legalized.
Is a pretty big majority.
And again, LeMahieu on the Sunday interview, he He said his caucus would be open to considering legislation this session from the state assembly to create a medical marijuana program in Wisconsin if assembly leaders removed their previously proposed idea of establishing state-run dispensaries.
Yeah, that's from Voss. We need state-run dispensaries.
Small government, state-run dispensaries. Well, you know what? There's a lot of money in weed. Man, who would have thought there's money in drugs? Just ask the tobacco and alcohol industries. But apparently they have all decided we have too many vices, so they're good with two. Yep, two. That's all you get. You get smoking and you get drinking.
You get some smoking.
We have decided what you can and cannot do, Robin Voss and LeMahieu. You can smoke. You can drink. Don't smoke, don't drink. What do? You can't smoke any weed. No, can't have that. Too many vices. It's just so stupid. The Senate leader's position is starting point for renewed negotiations on the issue of legalizing marijuana use for medicinal purposes has run into roadblocks in previous sessions, largely due to Senate Republicans' opposition to the idea. Here's what LeMahieu from Oostburg said. There are members of our caucus who are supportive of medical marijuana. The challenge of the bill that the Assembly introduced last session was state-run dispensaries. Growing the size of government doesn't seem to be the best way to do it. Now, Wisconsin is among a shrinking minority of states. We are surrounded by legal weed. On all sides. And we're giving away, I mean, you go to Detroit, load up. It's cheaper in Detroit or Michigan. Illinois' got it. Minnesota's got it. We got legal weed all around us.
Yeah, we're giving tens of millions of dollars.
Millions. I mean, just go to any of these dispensaries across the state line. There's lots of Wisconsin plates. Wisconsin among a shrinking minority of states who do not have recreational or medical use marijuana programs. About half the states have legalized small amounts of marijuana for recreational use, including Minnesota, Illinois, and Michigan, as mentioned. Assembly Minority Leader Greta Newbar said this, I really hope that we see some real interest from our Republican colleagues in working on this issue. We know that both medical and recreational marijuana legalization are very popular. And once again, let's go to the Marquette University Law School poll. Recently asked about the topic in January last year and found a familiar percentage, 63%. Was that the same number of folks that wanted? Yes, 63% said abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and also 63% support legalizing marijuana. Now, that's straight up recreational marijuana.
It gets much higher, no pun intended, when you look at the percentage of people who want at least medicinal.
86%. 86. That includes lots of Republicans. Come on. I mean, you have 86 that want at least medicinal. 86, and again, another 63%. Now, if we had the ability as citizens to put a referendum on the ballot and have it actually go into effect, we would have abortion without question and, without challenges from the Republicans in this case. And we would have, presumably, not only guaranteed we'd have medicinal marijuana.
Absolutely.
But we presumably have 63% of respondents.
63%?
Yeah, you're going to get that. People, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's not like this is something new that's going to impact. You know what? All this is doing is legalizing the use that we already have. This is already happening. What's the downside from a state perspective? Well, you're kicking all the tax dollars to Illinois, Michigan, and Minnesota.
Yeah.
Why are you giving it away?
Let's keep that here.
Let's keep it here. Let's do it here, man. This is Wisconsin. We got some agriculture in this state, right?
Absolutely.
Aren't we known for kind of some of that stuff? I think we're pretty good at those things. And give me a break. I mean, with all the hemp stuff, the Delta thing. You refine the hell out of the legal hemp, and you get enough product that you can sell at a gas station, pretty much unregulated. But it's not as controlled as the markets are for regular THC as in these other states. I mean, and they have it down, man. When I go to Metro Detroit to visit family and hang out, you go into these dispensaries. They're like a Starbucks. They're beautiful. They're awesome. People are friendly. The products are tested.
Kiosks.
They got kiosks, man. They buzz you in, buzz you out. They check your ID. You do the whole thing. And what do they do? What does regulation do? And I'm down for the regulation. I'll pay a little bit more so I don't have mold in my weed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't have pesticides. I'm smoking pesticides in my weed. this is the thing. Now, when you go black market, think of the old days back when they in Prohibition, when alcohol, bathtub gin, people were dying because people were mixing up whatever
alcohol.
Right. Come on. Wisconsin Republicans.
We can do better.
You are in the minority. 63% of people want abortion legal in most or all cases. 63% of Wisconsinites want legalized recreational marijuana. And 86%, that includes a lot of those Republicans, want medicinal weed. And if you can't get it done, then maybe the reason that people want to have referendums, promoted and pushed out by the citizens is because you folks, you don't listen. But we listen. 855-752-4842. Come back with us.
People say that I'm a bad influence. I say the world's already. I'm just adding to it. They say I'm teenagers suicidal. Come on, do as I do. Go ahead, get mad and do it. People say that I'm a bad influence.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. Not a bad influence, just not a role model. 855-752-4842. Come on, who we kidding? 855-75. So thank you for sticking around and hanging out with us. Make sure you stay at the top of the hour. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin at Green Bay, going to join me for the 5 o'clock hour. Always love it when Harvey comes around. Lots to talk about on the national level as well. Talking about the weed here in Wisconsin. There's a little bit more on this, and some of you texters are cracking me up. Sherry from Horicon, can't drink, can't smoke, la, la, la. Is it a song? Yeah, don't drink, don't smoke, what do you do? Like Stray Cats, I think it was. Maybe, and this is before your time, just have to look that one up. Bill from Green Bay, he says, a couple of friends and I went to Menominee, Michigan, just across the border from Green Bay, to visit, quote unquote, a dispensary. And there were 2 lines of cars about a half a mile long each.
Damn.
Waited over an hour in line, and every single plate was a Wisconsin plate. So many lost tax dollars.
Yeah, man.
No, they're not lost, man. They're just going to Michigan and Illinois. They know exactly where they are.
Oh, yeah.
They're in their coffers. Andrew says, has anyone tried selling it to Robin Voss in the form of a THC-infused spotted cow? It's just, is so hypocritical for, and now the Surgeon General has come out and recommending Congress or, to act and say, hey, they're, cancer risk for alcohol. And while the politicians are, nanny state and poo-pooing and all that. And, that aside, there's certainly risks to alcohol. And they're a lot higher than the risks to from the use of cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Well, especially if you're having like edible THC rather than smoking it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, man.
For real, right? Totally different. And so you cannot, as a Republican, or those folks, even if you're whatever your political persuasion is, if you're okay and you're totally down with legalized beer and spirit sales, which I am, and most people are, whatever, do what you want, people. But how can you be against the sale of cannabis? I'm for real. I mean,
it's the devil's lettuce, Tom.
Yes, of course it is.
It might make you happier. More
Don't
chill.
We don't want that.
God.
We can't have that. Also, the regulations. Tom from New Berlin points out no stems and seeds. The
pre-sifted.
the terrible stuff that we used to get in college. Let me just put it that way. I mean, this stuff was like brickweed. It was.
No.
It was. I mean, like a pound would be like this. Like 4 inches just compressed at the bottom of a bag.
Geez.
It was just out of hand, and it was so stemmy
Dusty.
and so weedy and just nasty.
Dusty, skunky.
But when when you're hard up, you buy anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And now it's good. It's quality. It's again, it's regulated. You know what's in it. They test it. There's a whole industry around it. And let me tell you something. The industry's always been there. It's going to be there whether or not Wisconsin decides to legalize it. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. As mentioned from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, 86% said they think medical marijuana should be legal. A 2023 state analysis estimated Illinois collected $36 million in tax revenue from Wisconsin residents purchasing marijuana in the land of Lincoln, where cannabis is legal.
That's just Illinois.
That's just Illinois. I gotta imagine it'd be higher than that. Now, Evers has included in 3 state budgets proposal to legalize marijuana in Wisconsin, but Republican buzzkill lawmakers who control the state legislature have rejected the idea during the budget writing process. LeMahieu on Sunday said lawmakers would do the same while crafting their budget, removing all policy from the budget proposal Evers gives them. Well, policy is tax, man. There's millions of dollars. Now, Voss in December said he still prefers a medical marijuana model with state-run instead of private dispensaries in order to avoid recreational marijuana in Wisconsin. Well, good luck with that. Here's what he said, Voss. A red line for us is that we do not want, like it has in almost every other state, medical marijuana to lead to recreational marijuana. I think there's a legal compassionate purpose for medicinal. I don't really see any reason for recreational. Well, and here's the thing about my freedom, Robin Voss. I don't give a damn whether you think there's a reason for it or not. Who are you to dictate to me that I cannot consume this product that is legal in many other states and is much safer than alcohol, sir? What gives you the right to limit my freedom, sir? Oh, I can't see any reason. Doesn't matter whether you see it or not, man. That's my decision to make. Just like gay marriage, just like abortion. You don't want it, don't do it. Don't force your stuff on me. Joe from Madison, you are up. Welcome, Joe. What do you got for us?
I love your passion on this subject. It's really well deserved. This is money that we're losing, and it's ridiculous.
Yep.
Getting back to money on another area,
Yeah.
I would like to return to our esteemed Senator Ron Johnson.
Yeah.
Now, let us remember the last time there was an effort to try to cut Social Security. Ron Johnson was right in there with his brilliant plan that every year Congress would vote on how much of your Social Security check you would get.
Yeah.
It might be half of it. It might be a quarter. Ron would decide because he's so brilliant with these things. I would point out, while he's moaning and complaining about California, that we still have North Carolina $53 billion in damages from Hurricane Helene. So shall we all just say, gee, North Carolina, why don't you get your act together and do a little pre-planning? I mean, so what if your highways caved in? How come you didn't plan for that, for God's sake? So I think Harvey K. might be a person to talk about this a little bit, Dom, which is, are we all in this together or not? I mean, isn't that part of what, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, out of the New Deal came this idea of, can we on a national level all work together for our common needs? And obviously, fires in California, flooding in North Carolina, they all affect us, and thus needs to be driven by a national look at this. So I'd be curious to hear what he had to say.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you for teeing it up. Harvey K is coming up next. He will respond. He's a professor emeritus of democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. He joins us next. Stick around.
People say that I'm a bad influence. I say the world's already I'm just adding to it. They say I'm teenagers suicidal. Come on to his idol. Go ahead, get mad and do it. Just do it.
Hello, Harvey.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Okay, you're not on Twitter, huh?
No, I am not.
Or Blue Sky now?
I did join Blue Sky. I'm following you.
Oh, okay. Listen, do me a favor. Just
Mm-hmm.
send me an email. Send me a note. Did I follow you back? I want to follow you back.
I haven't posted anything.
Oh, well, okay. If you ever get around to being active, let me know, and I promise you I'll follow you back. But the other thing is that I tweeted, I both X'd or tweeted today, and Blue Sky posted the idea that how I was looking forward to being on this afternoon to, and I gave various reasons, including having such a good time with Dom and his producer, Jess. But it would be my pleasure to also identify you by way of your Blue Sky handle there. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
So,
It's just all lowercase, just PS.
Jess PS. Okay, I got to write that down. Jess PS. Is that a married Plotkin cell or is that a parental one?
Cell is my married.
Okay, Jess
Edition.
So it's Jess PS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will try for that right after we get off. Thanks. Okay, and I did hear the question that the woman posed, and I'd be excited to talk about it.
All right, very good.
You know the one I'm talking about these
do.
environmental disasters and all that. Because in fact, one of the things in the New Deal was specifically that.
I just love her question. Are we all in this together or not?
Well, clearly we're not. I mean, that's the tragedy.
Clearly
we're not. Oh, God.
All right, I will be able to hear you, but I need to turn off channels so that I can get the podcast posted from last hour.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay. Oh, that much time. Boy, I came up early today. But I'm glad I did. I really am glad I heard that question.
Dom, you're connected if you want to talk to Harvey.
Hey, Harvey, how you doing, man?
Okay. I love that question that you closed on last segment.
Yeah, that was what regarding discretionary spending.
The environmental disasters and because that was right at the heart of a major, in fact, of a lot of the major New Deal efforts. And I won't go through it now. If you ask me,
save it
if
for
you
the
want me to
radio.
answer
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Do you know the name of the? Do we know the name of the woman?
Joe. Yep, Joe's a great
Joe.
caller. Yep,
Good.
Joe.
I'll say the question Joe asked. So
Yes. All right. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Yay. Good to see you, man. Thanks for joining me, man.
Good to see you, but I don't see you yet. But I will see you.
1 minute.
1 minute.
$15
seconds, I assume.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for listening. To be a part, you can contribute at 855-752-4842. Jess P.S. working hard on the board and the phones. And jazzed as hell, Harvey K., our favorite Delano Democrat, a professor emeritus of democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. It's 5 o'clock on Mondays, and Harvey joins us usually at this time. Harvey, great to see you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you. And I'm really... well, I should say excited, but I'd be very happy to respond to Joe's question from the end of the last segment, late in the 4 o'clock hour.
Yes. Our fine caller, Joe, talking about the disasters out in California and the response or lack thereof and criticism, certainly by the megas and the Republicans. But she brought up FDR. And Harvey, what's your take?
Well, it's really, what's interesting is FDR, not only Teddy Roosevelt had an interest in the environment conservation, but FDR was very determined to address questions of the environment to begin with, not simply both for the sake of the environment itself, but also for the sake of the humanity that lived in the state of New York, where he was governor before he became president of the United States, and then all the more when he became president of the United States. And I'll start by way of an example here in Wisconsin. When FDR was elected, in his first 100 days, they had an amazing program or initiatives to enact programs and laws. And what was created in the first 100 days was something that a lot of Americans were a little suspicious of, but ended up being, in many ways, the most welcome and the most embraced of all the initiatives. And that was the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And here in Wisconsin, the CCC was very active in creating parks and also in fighting soil erosion, especially out in western Wisconsin and southwestern Wisconsin. But there's another even bigger example I can give you of what transpired. We all know, well, at least I hope we've all heard of the novel by John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, which is, of course, the trials and tribulations of the families that suffered the Dust Bowl from northern Texas through Oklahoma. I mean, the entire sort of Plain States area, you might say. And when FDR became president, the Dust Bowl was really setting in. And of course, we end up with, in quotes, the Okies heading west to California. Well, in the course of the administration, the first few years, they decided that there was only one thing they could do, and it wasn't simply, to address the needs of the Okies by setting up certain kinds of agricultural camps to try to at least alleviate the troubles that many of them had when they got to California. They decided it was imperative to not allow the Dust Bowl to go unanswered itself. And they created an agency whose name I'm forgetting right now, whose task it was to plant trees, vast windbreaks. Now, why was that necessary? Because we think of the Midwest and the Plain States as having a phenomenal agricultural base in the soil. But it was the case that in the Plain States, the soil was actually not very deep. And it could, and when you cultivated it, it could easily blow. And the winds of the Dust Bowl did just that. It blew Dust Bowl soil, dust, as far east, in some cases, New York. There were cases where New York City and other cities were affected by it. Not unlike the fires that have come out of the Northwest and out of California.
Smelling the smoke here in Wisconsin.
The smell, exactly. So they decided the thing to do is you can't block, you can't end the wind. I mean, that itself is impossible. But they knew that if you could set up these vast forests and windbreaks in parts of the Plain States, it would alleviate the troubles that these farmers would experience in the future. So, I mean, they worked at addressing the very kinds of things that right now Republicans are saying, oh, I mean, forget it, right? I mean, let them take care of themselves. But let's also consider the fact that the question of the growth of population and cities and housing in the environment of the Southwest leaves, I mean, that was a tragedy to have allowed that kind of development. I mean, I'm not telling everyone they should have stayed behind in Wisconsin or Oklahoma or anything else, but it is the case. There should have been much better planning. Having said that, there has been action. I mean, the Republicans right now are lying about the Democrats. The Democrats may well have failed in the short term, but they're lying about the Democrats as if they're the ones who created this situation. It's the big businesses that decided they were going to take advantage of people's desires to move to areas like California. And thus you get the kinds of concentrations of population that you do. But in any case, FDR, and by way of the New Deal, and we could have seen such if the Green New Deal proposed by AOC and the senator whose name I'm forgetting right now, was it Markey? Was it Markey? In fact, yeah. If the Green New Deal had taken any hold on the congressional imagination, we might well have been able to be in a better position now to address these kinds of things. I mean, we're in, I don't want to make too much of this because we get our own disasters possibly, but right now, as I've said to my sister and some other people around the country, just thank God you're not living in Southern California.
Folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That's Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Harvey, you bring up an interesting point. And while I don't take the criticism from MAGA and Republicans very seriously, if there's a policy change to be attached, you talked about planting these trees and the efforts of FDR back during the Dust Bowl days. Well, that's a different policy, right? They had to change farming procedures. They put the. Right. I mean, there was some changes. Do you see what do you think? Do you have any opinion on what Southern California could have done differently given these circumstances? From the reporting from last week, when everyone's got their taps on, and the pressure's down, doesn't matter how much water there is or isn't, it's not gonna do anything. When the winds are 100 miles an hour, a hose isn't going to get it done, Harvey. So, what's your opinion? I'm not sure you're an environmentalist or anything like that, but what's your take on what Southern California and California themselves could potentially do going forward to mitigate these kinds of risks?
Well, I honestly do not know specifically what they can do because I've actually only been in Southern California a couple of times. Everything I know about Southern California I garnered from television, but no, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But it is the case that consider the troubles at the lower where the Colorado River is flowing south through the states in the Southwest to Mexico and eventually was supposed to, get out to the ocean. I mean, we've allowed river sources and literally we've wasted water and they've exploited water resources in ways that make it very difficult. I want to remind you that it was not long ago, well, at least not long ago since I've been living in Wisconsin, that people in the Southwest wanted us to export water from the Great Lakes to them. Now, that to me is outrageous. Okay, that's outrageous. I mean, it's unbelievable. So what can be done besides setting up pipes from the Great Lakes is start figuring out, I'll be crude about it, start figuring out if Southern California can handle the population it has given the available water resources.
It becomes a mathematical equation. Hell, I saw Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, Harvey. I mean, I know how important water is to California. Folks,
oh, yeah, no kidding. You know what? I just saw that film for the first time this past summer in New York.
Oh,
My
no
son-in-law.
way.
Yeah, no, actually, I saw it earlier, but I forgot half of it, and I got reminded. So I think
it's
it was
still
the
a
first
classic,
time.
right? Jack Nicholson. Oh, so good.
I'll put it on
Absolutely.
my list.
Absolutely.
I got Jess with a running list here. A lot of movies she hasn't seen yet, so we're gonna.
Jess, have you seen Grapes of Wrath, the film version of the novel?
I have not seen the film. I have read the book.
Everybody read the book, man.
I've got a
in high
second
school.
edition copy of the book with some of the pages printed out of order.
I did a movie podcast. I did a movie podcast and a political podcast with people in which I was talking about the Grapes of Wrath. So I reread the novel, and I'm convinced all the more now. John Steinbeck was America's greatest novelist, and the Grapes of Wrath, I don't think there's a better novel in American literature.
I may have to read it again as an adult, but being forced to read things like that when I was in high school just kind of leaves a...
Well, whenever someone tells you to do something.
I will not do it. The answer is always no. Harvey K., he's a professor emeritus of democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Harvey, how is democracy holding up these days? And specifically, we've had the sentencing of the president-elect, which is a big fat nothing. So he's a convicted felon with no fine, with no jail time, no probation, no monitor.
No nothing.
No drug testing, no peeing in a bottle.
Oh, that would have been so interesting.
I mean, so what do you think, what's your opinion on how all that is kind of slowly wrapped up?
Well, for some years now, and Trump is like the cherry on top of all this. The political and economic elites have been getting away with, in quotes, murder. They have been getting away with stuff. And ask yourself, the average working person sees this, and what do they think? They think, one, there's no reason to have any trust in the elites.
True.
Which probably was always the case, but but then the question is, well, then what are they going to think? Well, if they feel themselves without power, they're going to think, well, I got to talk about this in terms of what do I really have to obey the law? Do I really have to cultivate in my children the idea that you have to obey the law for the sake of your fellow citizens? If indeed we have a president who's a convicted felon, right? I mean, give me a break. I mean, that's exactly the situation. But this is not just Trump. I mean, this goes back to the 2008, 9, 10 Great Recession, when the Obama administration failed to prosecute the bankers.
Didn't fail. They
declined. Sorry, didn't fail. You're right. Declined. Absolutely. So, I mean, it's been this ongoing thing for, what is that now? How many years is that? 20 years? I don't know. How far back ought we go, right?
Oh, and further than that, I mean, go back to the FDR days. I know you like to harken back to those days with, Robert Barons and the whole thing and trust busting. I mean, it is the rich are going to do the rich thing. I guess my question, and maybe we'll have to carry this over to the next segment, is yes, though that is the observation. As a law-abiding citizen of this country, well, generally law-abiding, depends what state I'm in. I find this wholly inadequate. I find it hypocritical, and I find it kind of pointless. I mean, why bother giving someone a conviction if there's no consequence? Hell, I'll go do all the things and get the advantage of my crime and take the conviction if nothing happens to me. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. That's Harvey K. Come back with us, 855-752-4842. We'll discuss more of the quote-unquote conviction. Also, apparently, perhaps some of the J6 report. Jack Smith resigned over the weekend. His report on January 6th will be allowed. We might be able to see that as soon as midnight tonight. Come back with us, 855-752-4842.
2 minutes, Harvey.
Great. By the way, if you do feel like watching the movie Grapes of Wrath, and you do, remind me, I have to send you this conversation that I had with this podcast, which I do several a year with them, called Movies versus Capitalism. And that film really provided for a great set of conversations.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
And otherwise, if you're looking for movies, I can recommend movies from the past.
All right.
Have you ever seen Casablanca?
Nope.
Do you like? No, you haven't. Oh, that's the greatest. That is the greatest. Oh, that's like one of the, that may actually be the greatest film ever. Seriously speaking. Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, just phenomenal. I was a guest host for a night on Turner Classic Movies, so I know these things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like movies in the abstract, but my attention span is not the best suited for a film.
Really? Are you
30 seconds.
Okay. I'll shut my mouth until we get going.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, joins me this hour. You can do so as well, 855-75-CIVIC. Kind of lamenting this conviction of Donald Trump getting away with it. And whatever benefit he garnered, Harvey, from cutting those checks and posting things incorrectly, and the benefit he received from that activity, there's been no consequence to it. And I guess this is kind of an ongoing story, man. It seems like, you know, the history continues to repeat itself with the rich and the powerful and the connected taking advantage of those positions and basically working the rest of us over, living by rules that, you know, not living by the rules that we have to live with. And with your affinity for FDR, can you give me a snapshot into the mindset, perhaps, of what the citizens were thinking? How did a guy like FDR connect to bring people together? Because I got to tell you, man, I believe these kinds of things would not happen if we felt like we had a sense of urgency, if we have a sense that if we band together, we could make changes. I just feel like back in those days, it seemed a little more unified, at least on the citizen level. Like, not us v them, but certainly concerned about the power of the rich and connected.
You know, I'll tell everyone, this was not a setup question. I didn't know that you were going to ask me that question.
Nor did I, man. It's this radio.
but just before we came on, just before I entered the studio by way of the StreamYard, I decided I was going to post something about the gross inequalities and FDR's view of the imperative of containing the power, at least of the economic elite. And then I'll come back to the question in the more general sense. He said, this was in 1935, he said, social unrest and a deepening sense of unfairness are dangers to our national life, which we must minimize by rigorous methods. People know that vast personal incomes come not only through the effort or ability or luck of those who receive them, but also because of the opportunities for advantage which government itself contributes. Therefore, the duty rests upon the government to restrict such incomes by very high taxes. Now, he called for high taxes on the rich, not only because they needed, as he saw, they needed the taxes to pursue the programs he had in mind. He believed that the gross inequalities in income literally empowered these folks to become economic royalists. And if they become economic royalists, democracy itself is severely threatened. And I do want to say that if people have a look at at the works I've been pursuing these last many years, one of the things I discovered in writing those is that FDR, in many ways, actually campaigned against the Gilded Age, against this privileged elite. In fact, he was called by many of them a traitor to his class because he came from the elite. But he was determined, he really was, to limit the incomes and wealth of the wealthy for the sake, not only, as I said, of the New Deal, but for the sake of democracy. And whether it was during the 30s, Great Depression, or later during the war years, he sought ways to enact or get Congress to enact laws limiting how much wealth could be accumulated, because he saw that as coming at the expense of working people. Now, I would also add that the FDR administration, all 12 years of it, and this I picked up from other historians as I entered into the work, was probably, despite the vast scale of government activity, the least corrupt administration ever in American history up to that point. Okay. So I mean, FDR's view of corruption was you go after it and you find folks who you can trust to occupy positions in your cabinet who are not out, to fill their own bank accounts, or like in the case of somebody who I won't bother to name, everyone will know. Okay. You don't seek to cut billions from the federal budget in order to enhance your $350 billion bank, of wealth.
Well, if you can't use your money to get yourself some more money, what's the point of the money, Harvey? I'd give it all away for just a little bit more. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Okay, Harvey. So then where did that go wrong? Was it Reagan? At what point because it seems like people were buying into it. The guy got elected, right? The tax rates were high. We didn't have quite the disparity we do now. It's seemingly, to my opinion. I think the facts would probably bear that out. And now we see you see Bezos and you see Elon Musk. And you see these folks flexing their wealth power, man. They're using it. They're using it to shape opinion. They're using it to shape legislation. They're shaping governments. I mean, Musk is over, once he got done with the election here, he starts, poking his nose into Europe, man. This guy continues to go. So at what point do you think we went from this thought of FDR to use these policies to limit the wealth and the corruption that would come from that? Where did that go wrong, man?
Okay, it began, and I hate to speak, once upon a time it was easy to speak of this guy because he was alive and he just passed away recently. It began in the latter half of the Carter years. Carter sought to empower business. He wanted to liberate business from the constraints of the FDR and Lyndon Johnson years. But it was during the Reagan administration when we saw, throughout the 1970s, the wealthy basically contributed to initiatives that would attack the idea of government itself, calling it big government, attack unions, calling it big unions. They wanted to reduce the pressure upon themselves to pay the taxes that might be fair. Don't forget it. The highest tax rate ever on the rich was instituted in the Eisenhower years, So anyhow, yes, during the Reagan years. But the point is, it continued. Whether it was a Republican or a Democrat, the practice continued of letting the rich get richer and richer while working people, ever since the early 70s, hardly saw any increase in their incomes and standard of living.
It is. It's terrible. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy, going to stick around for the remainder of the hour. Pew Research, Harvey, from January 9th, 2025. Economic inequality seen as major challenge around the world. Most say rich people's political influence is a big contributing factor. We're going to come back and talk about this with Harvey K. plus some of your calls, 855-752-4842.
All right, Harvey, 5 minutes.
Okay, remind me. When it's this hand or the other hand, it's minutes. When you're up here, it's seconds, right?
Flip those.
Sorry, this is minutes.
Yeah, fingers towards the sky are minutes, towards the side are seconds.
Whoa, okay. Got it. But I was okay there. I was just wanting to remind myself.
Mm-hmm.
At least I believe I was okay.
You were just fine.
Thank you. Jess, regardless of your inactivity, I just joined you on. I just followed you there, hoping to inspire you to greater activity.
One minute.
Okay, doke.
$15.
Welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, 855-75 is the phone line. It's a text line. Tom from Jackson. Hi, Dom. Great guest, Harvey K. Yes, he is a great guest. He is Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Harvey, the tax rates back from the FDR days, we talk about wealth and what's changed from then to these days and all that. But even at 91%, I mean, the effective tax rate wasn't that, man. People had deductions and so forth. They weren't really paying that. My understanding is probably more like half of that. The top 1% probably paying more like 40 to 50%.
Well, that's still a hell.
Well, yeah, it's a lot more than it is today. But do you think there's something to be said about being realistic about that? Yeah, I mean, it's a 90% tax rate, but then you can take off your mortgage interest deduction, your meals and entertainment, your travel to whatever, and next thing you know, you work it all down, and it's not nearly that much. Because if we're talking about really having the impact, I mean, we could have a 40%. 45%, 50% tax rate with minimal deductions for the super uber wealthy and effectively get the same kind of result, don't you think?
In my head, look, that marginal tax rate, I think is the way it was referred to.
Well, the marginal tax rate versus the effective tax rate, right?
There's
a marginal, right?
Yes,
but
right.
Then you did get all your deductions, and there were a lot more
right.
back then.
I would stick to that I would stick to that for people who are billionaires, and I would basically just say, but take out the deductions. I believe in. Look, Stephanie Kelton, who's what they call the sort of queen of modern monetary theory, she argued the number one, that we have a deficit myth, and she got a bestseller by arguing that. But what's interesting is in her book, she talks about the fact that government can run deficits up to a certain point doesn't mean that you should not tax the rich, because by not taxing the rich, we've now allowed the billionaires to create what she called, and I have called, the democracy deficit. When you've got billionaires, multi-billionaires, and it sounds so weird to say multi-billionaires, doesn't it?
Right.
People who have more than $1 billion, the way in which they're shaping government is utterly insidious. They're buying. Weren't you blown away and shocked when Musk said, "What is it? If you signed a petition or something to that effect, he'd give you $1 million." Remember that?
Yes, yeah.
I mean,
to get people to register to vote. Yeah, vote your registration drive for $1 million a pop.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was pretty much, MAGAs come hither kind of thing. Okay.
Yep. Correct.
No, I mean, seriously speaking. And right now he wants to underwrite the fascist party in Germany. And he wants to underwrite, the essentially fascist party in England. Yeah, right. And well, he sees the Republicans as just that kind of party, I expect, because that's where he's putting all his eggs right now. I mean, this is just utterly outrageous. I mean, maybe we should go from taxation to confiscation sometimes. I know. You won't be able to have me on anymore if I talk like that.
855-752-4842. Well, they do have, asset forfeiture. So if you get caught driving down the street with a bag of weed and a bag full of $100 bills, they can just take it and assume you're a drug dealer and you got to go fight to get it back. I mean, that happens to.
Wait a minute. We already just saw it. We just saw a felon. Look, we have a president who's a felon.
Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. The Republicans over the weekend, or maybe up last Friday, there's still talk of them threatening to basically pay for Donald Trump's extension of his 2017 tax cuts, which will cost us, trillions of dollars, by cutting Medicaid, some of these safety net programs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only are they flaunting it, Harvey, they're coming after us. They're coming after the folks, and these are people pay into these things, man. Why? It seems like we're down, and they're trying to kick us when we're down here, Harvey. Where? How do we get people to rise up against this kind of mentality?
Well, what first came to mind when you were going into this question was to think that back in the 1950s, McCarthy was finally called out. That's Joe McCarthy was finally called out by someone said, "Have you no shame?" I think that was something to that effect.
Yep.
Well, I mean, clearly speaking, the Democrats, well, they're pretty shameful most of the time these of late too. But there has to be some way in which Republicans are called out for their shameless behavior. Number one. Number two, it isn't just. I mean, clearly we have to concern ourselves. The caller Joe had talked about, aren't we all in this? Aren't we all in this together?
Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly we're not all in this together. But what we do need to know is that there are solidarities which can make a difference. And right now, we all know that that Trump won, and he didn't win by a landslide or anything else. John Nichols in The Nation has done a good job of reminding us that he won really by a hair's breadth, you might say. And it also is the case that even, for example, in AOC's district in New York, the fact is that even as he increased by 11% his vote in her district, she did all the better. So there's obviously a lot of contradictions. Go to Florida. They enacted the 15%, the $15 an hour minimum wage. Go to the other states down there in the plains, like Missouri and others, which now have, and Nebraska, which said, well, no, we're not going to fund religious schools. That kind of stuff. There are vast numbers of working people who are looking to be effectively organized, whether it's in labor unions or in state, in public interest groups. We have got to support these initiatives, and we have got to find ways, and that's the beauty of civic media, that it provides an alternative to the right-wing voices out there, I believe, at least. I mean, that's my take. I mean, beyond that, I'm not sure. I mean, I belonged to a labor union. We lost our collective bargaining rights. It annoys me no end that Scott Walker is on Twitter just yapping away about freedom and other things. My God, he must be looking for a job in the White House or something. Maybe they can give him a waiter's position, something like that. No, it really is the case that we've reached an abyss. I thought we reached the abyss a few years ago. It's like we're out on a gangplank right now, and working people know they're being screwed. They have to be offered some kind of vehicle, some kind of way of joining together and changing it. The ambitions of Americans, the aspirations of Americans are reflected in the fact that labor unions, even though they remain weak, are very popular ideas right now, very popular institutions. I mean, if the Democrats are smart, they're going to make every effort to invite labor into their conversations about the future of the DNC and the party, and they're going to turn the Democratic Party back into the party of the working class. That is my view. Other than that, immediately we're facing, what was it? Hell and high water.
Well, Harvey, I mean, Donald Trump, I think certainly in this past election and in 2016 as well, capitalized on that. I think he kind of stole some of Bernie Sanders' thunder a bit. Now, he didn't follow through with what he was saying he was going to do.
Yes, he did. Right.
He certainly, he tapped into that, right? And a lot of folks went. Same thing again in this last election. I think folks are certainly, their instincts are correct. They haven't gotten a raise in a generation. Some of these things are right there in front of us. The problem is, who's to blame for it? Besides us, then what's the circumstance to change that? And if there's not going to be, if it apparently wasn't Kamala Harris in this time, and maybe Joe stuck around a little too long and he didn't give Harris or somebody else time to articulate that vision and that message, that is not it's not going to be the
Kamala Harris did not have that.
You.
Kamala Harris had no vision, no message that would have addressed the kinds of things you and I are talking about. Okay, as soon as they brought Tim Walz on thinking that would be the way of appealing to working people. What'd they do? They then ran to the center of the political spectrum. No, that's not the way to go about it. By the way, you made a good point. I want to remind everyone, back in 2015 and 16, when Trump was running for president that first time, he was talking, yes, about getting rid of Obamacare, but he said he was going to have a better program. Okay. Now that's interesting.
Well, in 2 weeks, it's always coming in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks,
right.
2 weeks.
I got
the best plan.
By the way, that wasn't a compliment to Trump, other than his slyness.
Yeah, well, and he does. I mean, he picked it up, and people bought it, and I think to some degree, it's the personality, right? I mean, there's some of that, and he's whether you like him or not, has charmed, for lack of a better term, the megas and what's left of the Republican Party. So I think there needs to be that kind of inspiring leader on the Democratic side, man. And I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, Harvey.
No, I haven't seen it yet either. Okay, I mean, there are people out there who would like to pursue the kinds of things we're talking about, but do they have that kind of, remember the term charisma? I haven't heard that term used in a long time. Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't have charisma. Okay. He has audacity is what he has, because he can lie and lie and lie and get away with it by portraying it's all going to be better just over the horizon. You watch.
In 2 weeks, Harvey. In 2 weeks.
We're going to have, and by the way, I can't wait to the day next Monday, the inauguration. Then you and I get to talk for an hour about that.
I look forward to it as always, Harvey. 855-752-4842. Let me throw this one out there before we get to the callers and the texters. As mentioned, Pew Research, economic inequality seen as a major challenge around the world. A couple of paragraphs here, Harvey, then I would like your comments. A new Pew Research Center survey of 36 nations finds widespread public concern about economic inequality. And when asked what leads to this inequality, most people across countries surveyed point to the intersection of wealth and politics. A few of the key findings. A median of 54% of adults across the nation surveyed that the gap between the rich and the poor is a, quote, very big problem in their country. 54%. And here's the kicker. Another 30% say it's a moderately big problem. We have 84%. Now, again, this is a survey of 36 nations, so USA just being one of them. But 84% of the people say this is a moderately or a very big problem between the gap between the rich and the poor. It's not like this topic is unknown, Harvey. I mean, it's right there in front of us. Everyone knows about it. Everyone's talking about it. You're talking about it all the time. We talk about it. How is this remaining if that's the concern?
Okay. Both right now, the Democratic Party and the labor movement are in desperate need of each other, but they are also in desperate need. You know, I wish the people we're talking about would pay attention to you and me. What can I say? They are in desperate need. They are in desperate need as well of a vision. They have no historical memory. I could sit here talking about FDR. And when's the last time you heard any political figure not just mention FDR's name, but actually behave in any way reminiscent of FDR, or for that matter, Lyndon Baines Johnson at his best?
Nobody.
Okay?
Nobody. No one in my since I've been paying attention the last, say, 20 years, I haven't heard squat.
Right. Exactly. So do we yell louder? Do you and I go network and say, go to your, open your windows and shout like hell or whatever it was? I mean,
right.
No, we have to keep doing it, and we have to encourage people, but it really does require some kind of leadership. And I mean, I thought we'd see more, in quotes, leadership from labor, and not necessarily, in the case like of O'Brien, O'Brien's his name, right? Who basically gave, a kiss and a hug to Trump at the Republican convention. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a good line, and then he turned around and he, became a goper. GOP
said all the corporate things. Also from Pew, Harvey, a median of 60% believe that rich people having too much political influence contributes a great deal toward economic inequality. I mean, the numbers are there. People know, Harvey. We just gotta, connect the dots for them.
When we come back from the break, I'm going to give you the quote that will answer it all.
All right. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. That's why you come around, man. We need the one answer for everything. Come back with us, 855-75-CIVIC.
Minutes, Harvey.
I can't wait.
30 seconds.
Got it.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. Last segment of the day. If you got something to say, hit us up right now, 855-752-4842. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Our final segment together. Harvey, you promised me before the break the answer that would solve it all. Professor, please.
In 1936, FDR the Democratic Party was clearly going to nominate him anew. And at the Democratic Party convention in Philadelphia, at a gathering held in a stadium, FDR went before the assembled and on radio to the nation and said, referring to those wealthy, the corporate bosses who were literally trying to take down his presidency. They were spending a lot of money trying to take down his presidency. And there was good evidence that there were conspiracies to try to take out his presidency. Okay. And he said this, and he referred to the rich as the economic royalists. These economic royalists complain that we seek to overthrow the institutions of America. What they really complain of is that we seek to take away their power. Our allegiance to American institutions requires the overthrow of this kind of power. And he added, in vain, they seek to hide behind the flag and the Constitution. In their blindness, they forget what the flag and the Constitution stand for. Now, as always, they stand for democracy, not tyranny, for freedom, not subjection, and against a dictatorship by mob rule and the overprivileged alike. As he said, our allegiance to American institutions requires the overthrow of the power of the economic royalists. When would you ever imagine a president of the United States speaking so honestly about a state of affairs? And indeed, when's the last time you ever heard anybody, in politics, at least mainstream politics, talk about that? He also said in that same speech, he said this, which we all have heard at some point, I'm sure. There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. And I think that's absolutely the case. Okay, we may have blown it, is my fear, this time around. Okay, but so far we haven't completely lost hold of democracy, and
Harvey,
we better get it together.
Could that speech be given today and still mean the same thing?
You bet it could. Absolutely. And he actually then, this is interesting. So this is 1936. 8 years later, in a State of the Union message, 1944, is where he proposed the Economic Bill of Rights, okay, which I don't want to go through them all right now. But at the end of that segment of his State of the Union, where he laid out the Economic Bill of Rights to guarantee health care, to guarantee a job at a living wage, to guarantee education, to guarantee a whole host of basic essentials to survival, he said recreation included. But then he went on to say, effectively, I'll paraphrase, and if we failed to do this, here we are, at the end of the war against fascism. If we fail to do this, we've essentially allowed fascism to rule us. In other words, he believed that the future, if it did not include basic fundamental economic rights, would cost Americans democracy. That's why it is absolutely essential that we not only, yes, overthrow, in his words, the power of the economic royalists, but that we create a more progressive social democratic America. That's FDR. I'm only communicating what FDR said. But I believe those words.
Harvey K., we had a texter here. Andrew says, if the highest tax bracket is doubled to 72% before deductions, those conservatives will call and claim the billionaires will leave the country. And if so, would that be a problem? Are you concerned of the Atlas Shrugged attitude? If the taxes went up, then all those economic royalists will take their ball and their bag of cash and go elsewhere?
There was a case during the FDR years where it's called, Alan Minsky and I and others have talked about this. Let's suppose we had elected a truly progressive new administration. Would the bosses, the corporate elite, would they pursue what's called a capital strike? A capital strike is where they hold, even if they don't leave the country, it has to do with holding back investments, which are essential to the American economy. Well, then that says, as FDR said, you got to overthrow their power. You have to figure out a way to disable them from controlling that kind of wealth and make it subject to public needs in favor of the public good.
However, there's really one answer for it. You want to hear my answer to it? My overall arching Dominic 2025 answer to it all?
Okay, this is the punchline of the day. The punchline of the day.
People need to stop cashing the checks. You know what I mean? Because those people, the billionaire class, their power lies with the checkbook. If you're not buyable, if they can't buy you, what can they do? Don't cash the checks, Harvey. What do you think?
So are you talking about a consumer strike?
Consumers, politicians, wherever it is, wherever the influence comes, whatever pressures there are, stop cashing those checks.
This will make good discussion in future. I see the signals from Jess. I don't want to get in the middle of something.
He's learning.
We're going to have to put that one off until next Monday. Harvey K., Professor Emeritus of Democracy from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Always enlightening, always pleasurable. I look forward to speaking to you next Monday. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Jess P.S., working the board, doing the hard work as well. Thank you to our fair audience for being a part. We will be back tomorrow, a little overtime with Maggie Dawn. And stick around right now. Pete Schwaba with Night Lights coming up next. Have a great night.